Hello, everyone. Welcome to All Things Aviation and Aerospace, your source for opportunities and possibilities in the aviation and aerospace industries. Remember, All Things Aviation and Aerospace is available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. I am your host, Vince Mickens, and today is my favorite kind of show because I get to showcase an industry icon while simultaneously mentoring a new generation of aspiring young professional aviators. The icon I'm speaking of is none other than Captain Theresa Claiborne, or as she is apparently known in some circles as Aviation Mother Teresa. I just heard that the other day. Anyhow, Theresa Claiborne is a recently retired United Airlines Boeing 787 Dreamliner captain. She's also the first African American female Air Force pilot, and she's a founding member of Sisters of the Sky. That's just a snippet. Captain Theresa got on my radar a few years ago when, as as part of the AOPA Brigadier General Charles E. McGee Aviation Inspiration Award Committee, I selected her to be the 2024 recipient. Since then, been sort of flight tracking her everywhere and then some. So you're going to hear all about her impressive aviation career track in a little bit. Theresa, welcome to All Things Aviation and Aerospace.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here. Joining Theresa and I are three very impressive young ladies well on their way to becoming airline pilots. One is Mariah Ervin. She is currently a junior at Elizabeth City State University. She's also a private pilot with her instrument rating and moving right along with that in terms of going towards her commercial and things like that. She also is involved heavily with OBAP, and she actually is their director of public relations for the Elizabeth City State University OBAP chapter. So, welcome to All Things Aviation, Mariah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you. And we have, I could almost call her an old friend because I've had her on the show before, and I ran into her last night at a Women in Aviation Capital Region chapter event. And here she is today on the show with us. Abby Awosanya. She is a graduate of the United Aviate Academy, which we're going to talk a little bit more about and give you some insight on that. She's also a commercial pilot. She is a certified flight instructor, or what we call a CFII, so instrument, and she has her multi-engine rating. She is a flight instructor in what we call the DMV, or the District, Maryland, Virginia area. And she's planning to soon transition to a regional airline. I have to admit, I asked her, I said, "Oh, so you're on somebody's waiting list?" She says, "No, I'm just going to will it. It's going to happen this year." So, and knowing Abby, it probably will. Abby, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
It's wonderful to have you back. And last but not least, we have Oded Vasquez. She currently is a real estate agent. As a matter of fact, I heard her talking earlier. Oded, you have a bachelor's in international business, right?
International relations, exactly.
International relations. And then she is a private pilot with an instrument rating and is currently working on her commercial. And she has a great story to tell. Oded, glad you're with us.
Thanks for the invitation.
It's a pleasure to have all of you guys on the show, and it's an honor to have Theresa on the show. Theresa, your accomplishments, bar none, are just amazing and such a great story. But I guess curiosity gets the best of us, and I got to go back a little bit and ask you, where did this aviation bug first start?
Well, actually, I decided when I was in college that I think I want to go in the military. And my father had been in the military, and once he retired, we were staying in the same place for just way too long. And I thought this can't be what life's about. So when I went to college, I said, I think I'll do ROTC. And when I applied, I was going into my junior year, and they had us go off to summer camp. So I went to summer camp, and they gave us a ride on a T-37. That was all she wrote.
That
It
was
was
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Although it wasn't as easy as I thought, because at the time they were only training 10 women a year. And so when I got back to the unit and my commander said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Hey, I got to fly in an airplane. I want to be a pilot. I no longer want to be a public relations officer. I want to be a pilot." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry, you can't do it." But, things changed. They decided that the women were working out okay. And so they decided to increase the number to 30. And that's when I slipped in. Yeah.
Wow. And how long did that take before you finally got
Actually,
the nod?
I got the nod about the middle of the junior year. They said, "Okay, you got to go take all the testing and you got to do the physical, and we're going to have a board meet on it." So by the end of my junior year, I knew that I was going to be headed to pilot training. So it was all good.
So that's interesting though, because you were interested in the military, you went into the ROTC program, which is a great program that a lot of people don't realize how good of a transitional program that is for going into the military. But it was the ride in the aircraft that really got your attention. It what was that like? What happened?
Well, okay. I know it's been a long time for you and I, Vince, but think about that first time you got in an airplane.
Yeah,
Not a passenger airplane, but when you're at the controls,
at
how
the
amazing
controls,
was that?
absolutely.
And if you like it, you like it. And you knew. And so that's what happened to me. I mean, I was bitten right then. That was it.
You were hooked, and that was the end of it.
I was hooked and that was the end of it. And when I got back and they said I couldn't do it, I'm like, well, I'll just go into public affairs, with the military. And then when the opportunity came up to, apply myself, I was like, okay, I'm in there. Yeah.
So what was that path like as you started your training, and what was that entire experience like?
Uh, it was pretty bumpy because I don't think that I was totally prepared as far as the academics that I had taken in the past. Um, I wasn't great at math, so I didn't take any math in college because I wasn't that great in it, and I like getting A's. So I said, okay, well, I'm not really good at math, so I'll just lay off that. I'll do all the literature and I'll do everything else. I'm going to get a liberal arts degree. But when I went to pilot training, I remember my distinct memory is of the instructor being at the board and he's writing a formula on the board and he says, "Now everybody remembers this, right?" And he turns around to the class and I'm sitting kind of near the back of the class and I see all the heads going up and down and I thought, what the is that? I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah, and I think it was just the coefficient of lift or something, but I didn't know what that was because I'd never taken anything like that. So,
So
that's one of
how'd
the
you
things
handle it?
oh, huh?
How did you handle it?
Buckle down. You got to learn it, right? I mean, I had no, like I said, in the past, I had no aerodynamics. I had nothing. I got to pilot training with 10 hours on a Piper Tomahawk, and that was it. So I was kind of like a fish out of water, but my personality type is one of those that whatever I start, I'm going to finish it. And so while the rest of my classmates were out having a good time at the lake, Theresa was in her room studying.
So
Yeah.
you actually trained in I'm sorry, a Tomahawk.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I have a few hours in that aircraft. There's a reason we call it the Tomahawk, but okay.
Well, I wouldn't know any difference, would I?
Right.
I know now, but back then I didn't know any difference. And the funny thing about that airplane, and these young ladies have never flown it because probably anyway, do they still fly that thing?
I haven't seen one in years, so
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
question.
A, a cute airplane though. It, the thing was is that it had a really long nose. And
Yes.
I'm really short. And I could not see, like when I flared, I couldn't see the end of the runway. So my instructor, who happened to be as short as me, she said, "You have the same problem I do. We're vertically challenged." She said, "So I'm going to teach you how to land this airplane by looking in your peripheral."
Mm.
That's how I learned how to
Yeah.
land it. Yeah. So when I got to T-38s, and that has a long nose, I had no problem with no flap landings.
Ah, so,
Yeah.
so, so that applied to your more advanced training.
There you go.
Yeah, so speaking of height, that's been something that followed you through your
Yeah,
career.
yeah, it did.
Um, First in the military, how did that play out?
Standing on the balls of my feet. No, actually, we tried to get a waiver. They wouldn't allow the waiver. They said you have to go get remajored, and I did, and I made it. Um, no comment after that.
Okay. What did you
Uh,
fly mostly in the
I flew a
military?
KC-135
Okay.
when I graduated from pilot training. Yeah, the military is like any other big entity or anything that is really competitive. Rules change. Rules change based on a lot of different things. Do we need a lot of people? Do we have a lot of people to choose from? So the whole height thing, and we all know that rudder pedals roll back to you, seats adjust up and down. It was just the thing. They wanted you to be 5'4". But there's women, plenty of women shorter than I am that are flying these days.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
No, I've always found that as an interesting part of your story, especially when you got to the airline. So we'll get to that in a little bit. I want to hear some of the other guest stories, and I think that'll be good for you, Theresa, to hear a little bit about what they've gone through in terms of their getting involved in aviation. And Odette, I'm going to put you on the spot because you were telling such a great story while I was doing show prep. And I thought, we got to share that with the audience because it was actually pretty cool. And I hope you can tell it very similar to the way you were talking about it uh, offline. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background of first of all, the fact that aviation was not on your radar. You didn't see it as an opportunity in any way, shape, or form. And then, your life changed forever with one particular period. So tell us a little bit about that.
So where I do my training, and most of the pilots that I know, they're around their 20s, early 20s, people that are doing their training at the moment. And me personally, I was born in Cuba, and the first time I came here, I was 10. So I've been flying for what, 20 something years now. Never met a female pilot, never expected. No one ever told me that was a job for females. And at 24, I was out and I met my friend and mentor at the moment. And we're like, oh, what do you do? And she's like, oh, I'm a pilot. I'm like, what do you mean you're a pilot? Yeah, I fly for a living. And I just look at her, remember, and say, like, why did no one tell me this? Why did no one tell me females are pilots? Like, this happens. And I told her that sounds so cool. And she's like, oh, why don't you do it? And I'm like, no, I started doing real estate. I'm doing pretty well. So a few years later, and I called her, I sent her a voice note through WhatsApp, and I'm like, hey, I was thinking about doing flight attendant, doing a part-time job. I love to travel. And by the end of the voice note, I said, oh, I should just become a pilot. Send the voice note. She calls me. She's like, we're talking about our options. She's like, I don't think you would do very well. I have a very strong personality, not for everybody. Um,
Yeah, didn't
but
she say you wouldn't last like 2 months?
it's like, oh, you would have last 2 weeks. She said 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Oh gosh.
She said
As
I
a
would
flight
have last
attendant, as a flight
as
attendant,
a
though.
As a
flight
flight
attendant.
attendant.
That's that
As
word
a
out. Yeah.
pilot, I have learned that my personality is very accepted by people, which is great. So she's like, you would be fired in 2 weeks. Somebody will be mean, you will be like, you need to respect me, and things will go down the hill. And then we hang up, and she calls me back, and she's like, just become a pilot. And I look at my sister across the room, and I'm like, I'm gonna become a pilot. That's it. This is what I'm doing next. And I hang up the phone, and 2 weeks later, we were doing the discovery flight, which I felt nauseous about getting in that plane. But as soon as I get in on that 172, it was amazing. It was, like I was telling the ladies before, you cannot think too much about the things that overthink your decisions sometimes. You have to go and just do it. And honestly, I love it. Every time that I get in the plane, just knowing, let's be honest, not everybody can do this. Because who wants to get in a plane? I believe every pilot is a little crazy, especially on a 172 on a Piper, which they're very
Hey, I
old.
resemble that remark.
It's
You and me
true.
both.
And I love it. I love it. And I didn't know anything about flying or planes. And I have had the opportunity by flying and being social at the airport on getting in different planes, which is it's a great opportunity for the amount of hours that I have.
It's funny, you touch on something that we always talk about with the flying community. We are a community. Pilots are a unique community and a very, I think, very special community because it's just something about we're all of the same mindset. We all have the same passion, and therefore we can all relate. Speaking of that and having the passion, because all of you are very passionate about it, Mariah, I know you're very passionate about flying. In fact, during pre-show, when you guys thought I wasn't listening, you were like, "Yeah, I'm doing the school thing. I got to get my degree and blah blah blah, but I just want to fly." So tell us where that comes from.
Um, okay, so for me, I didn't know that I went to fly until I was 16. Most people my age that I talk to that are already flying, they're like, yeah, I knew since I was 2 years old, or this, and my dad's a pilot, and things like that. But for me, it was my first commercial flight. Me and my family, we traveled to Jamaica, one year. It was, I believe, 2022. And that was my first flight since I was like a baby. So I begged for the window seat. I knew I just wanted the window seat. And I got in the plane. We were flying, takeoff. My head was out the window the whole flight, through the clouds, through everything. And I just loved it. And I'm talking to my mom. I'm like, wow, I really love being in the air. I was like, I've never had this feeling. Like, I don't know what I'm feeling, but I love it. And so I turned to her and I'm like, maybe I should be a flight attendant because I have family members who are flight attendants, but I've never met pilots. Excuse me. But yeah, I've never met pilots. And I'm like, maybe I should be a flight attendant. And my mom goes, or you could fly the plane. And she says that, and I'm like, you know how moms
Good for
are.
mom.
What a great
You,
mom.
Good for
I'm like,
mom.
moms are like, you can do whatever you want to do. You can be a pilot, you can be a doctor, whatever you want to do. But I took that so seriously. As soon as she said that, I just sat there the rest of the flight thinking, and I was like, I think I actually want to try flying a plane. And so, like a couple weeks later, I come to her and I'm like, so you know how you said I should be a pilot? Let's do it. Like I want to be a pilot. And she's like, oh. She was like, I mean, of course I was serious, but I didn't think you'd actually follow through and everything. So I was like on YouTube videos. I was like, I if you look at my YouTube, I was just watching a bunch of videos and I was like, how do you learn how to fly? How do you be a pilot? Just searching all this stuff. And we did some research and I took my discovery flight and I immediately fell in love.
Wow. And here you are. So
Yeah, here I
your
am.
next steps, you're currently working on your commercial?
Yes, my commercial license.
Okay. So you're well on your way. And your goal is to be another Theresa Claiborne?
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Abby, you have a great story to tell. Tell us a little bit about your background and your interest in flying and how that came about.
Yeah, so my story is kind of very similar to Mariah and Odette. It's a little bit of a mix of both. I first became interested in flying during my first time on a commercial airline trip, and that was all the way to Nigeria, which was a very long journey. Probably had like two layovers, one in Europe, one someplace else. But the only thing that I remember about the journey is how much I loved being in the plane. I just loved, similar like Mariah, looking out the window, watching us take off, just being up in the air, looking down at how tiny everything is below. And that was just a very memorable experience. And from then, I always had that little bug for flying. But you don't really see many female pilots. And so I just thought that being a pilot wasn't a career for us, especially at such a young, impressionable age. I was 6 years old. And so if I don't see any female pilots, I'm assuming that that's just not a career for us. But I see several female flight attendants, but just not female pilots. And so that bug was in me for like my entire life, honestly, growing up. If anyone asked me what was my dream job, I would either say a pilot or an actress, one of the two. But a pilot's more practical. And so I went to college for a degree in psychology and was going to do the clinical psychology route and probably go to grad school to get my PhD in clinical psychology so I can become a therapist. But however, 2020 happened, and like a lot of people, I reevaluated my entire life and like my life choices and what I wanted to do with my life during that pandemic. And I took my discovery flight in 2020 decided to change careers. Once I was at the controls, I immediately knew like this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And there was no turning back. I was like, oh well, maybe if I could do it like part-time while working and then part-time flight being a student. Nope. Just full throttle all the way through. This is what I need to do because this is my passion. And so like Odette, I'm a career changer. I was working as a clinical research psychologist at the time and quit all of that, packed up my life from Maryland, moved all the way across the country to Arizona to attend United Airlines Flight Academy that they have out there. And the rest is history.
So I'm gonna put you on the spot. I happen to know your mom and dad, and I know that, your sister is currently a resident in medicine, and your mom and dad are, the doctor, lawyer, engineer type generally.
Yeah.
But you're going a little bit of a different path. How's that
Mhm.
working for you in terms of them appreciating you're going a different direction than they originally thought you and that you originally thought that you were going?
Yeah, so if anyone's familiar with like African people or African parents, we only have two career choices. That's either to be a doctor, a lawyer, or even an engineer, one of the three. And so I didn't tell them at first when I started flight training, which I know it's crazy because I'm getting in a plane every like every other day flight training, like they don't know where I am. I'm just going up there flying. And so I didn't tell them at first, but then when it was getting really serious, like about to solo, I was like, okay, maybe I should tell them that I'm considering changing career paths. This is what I want to do. And so I first saw my dad. My dad was super supportive immediately. And he was like my
He
biggest fan.
surprised you?
Yeah, he surprised me, yes. But then my mom, of course, I kind of expected the response from my mom. She was very scared for me and terrified. And every time I would go for flight training, she would just say a prayer over me. And I'm just like, Mom, it's okay. Like, I'll be all right. But yeah, now that they've seen how far I've come, they are so proud of me. And they literally tell everyone, like everyone, even the person bagging their groceries at the grocery
My
store, like,
daughter's
oh,
going to be an
my daughter's a
airline
pilot.
pilot.
Yeah. And so I'm
Abby,
like, could you please stop?
Abby, I'm gonna do one better. I
Okay.
got my private, and my mom did not know I was doing my pilot training till the day that I passed that check ride. Because I refused to hear her be afraid or having
Mhm.
to talk about how the plane will fall. Because I'm like African Cuban moms are like the worst scenario can happen. Even
Yeah.
that's the only thing that they see. So I went through 7 months of my training, got my license, and just drove to my house. And I'm like, here it is. And she's like, I knew it. I knew you were doing something like that.
Wow.
I am glad we have a very similar story because
Mhm.
it was very hard to hide something so important, especially when you do your first solo, when you do your first cross country that you're flying by yourself. It's all about what you have learned, and things can happen. And all of that you're doing, and when you get home, you cannot celebrate it because you cannot tell them because
Yeah.
you don't want the pressure of them. So it's funny that that happened to you too in a way.
Yeah. Does she now tell
Captain, when
everyone
you
that her daughter's a pilot nonstop?
And then now she knows when I'm flying because of the weather or not. I feel like she has become like a little master pilot. And every she's like, my daughter, yeah, she's starting to be a pilot. And I'm like, we don't need to tell everybody.
You guys are funny. Teresa, I was just going to say, when you hear these stories and you hear what they're talking about, I mean, you have been very instrumental and involved with Sisters of the Sky and other mentoring and programs and efforts to let young people know about the opportunities and also give them some guidance through organizations like OBAP, et cetera, in terms of their career aspirations to be an airline pilot, to be a professional pilot. When you hear stories like this, what comes to mind?
Um, just that it's a really hard road to hoe, but if I meet a young lady who's seems to be fired up about it, I'll spend the time. Mariah and I have a really interesting start on our friendship. And I found out about her through her auntie, who is the flight attendant. Remember, she said she had flight attendants in her family. And that was on a trip. We were going to Africa. And she started talking to me, and she actually didn't even know who I was. But the other flight attendants knew who I was. They go, "You don't know who that is?" I could hear him talking. "You don't know who that is?" She's like, "Well, no." So then when they tell her, she's like, "Oh my goodness." So she comes up, she goes, "Captain Claiborne, can I give you this? This is the name of my niece, and she's actually my great niece because her mother is my niece, and she wants to fly airplanes, and everybody's all excited about it." I said, "Oh, okay." Just like that. And I said, "Okay, well, sure, sure." I said, "This is what I'm going to do. Have Mariah call me." Because what I have seen in the past is that some people do think it's a really cool job, and the parents are more excited about it than the child. And
That happens all
so,
the time.
honestly, yeah, yeah, I don't, and this may say I'm selfish, but I don't have time to entertain the aspirations of the parent. It's the young person that says they want to be a pilot that I need to be talking to. So initially, Mariah's mother reached out to me, and I'm like, okay, okay. And I didn't do anything else with it. And so the next time I flew with her auntie, I said, "Well, Mariah's mother called me." I asked Mariah to call me. I said, "Trust me, I'm not some crazy person. I've been doing this for a long time, but I need Mariah to call me. I don't want to hear about how interested she is from her mother." And so then
You want to
Mariah,
hear how interested she is from
yeah,
herself.
yes. And sure enough, even Mariah, she at the time, she was like, "Oh yeah, I just think it's kind of fun." And I could tell she was really, really bright. And she thought it was fun and everything. And she was saying that someone that she really looked up to was a woman who does, flies around the world and does neat things. And I said, "Oh, okay. All right." I'm honestly, I'm like interested in people who want to do it for a living. And so I don't know,
That are passionate about it.
yeah. So she applied for our scholarship, and she didn't get the scholarship the first time she applied because that was still there. And I said, I just want you to go and really look at this, okay? And then after she did that, the next time she came, she was ready. She was ready.
Yeah, it's great that you bring that up because I think um, you hear it from a lot of young aspiring pilots that, oh, that sounds fun, that sounds cool, and they really don't have an idea of how challenging it's going to end up being. But they also don't know that it's the passion that flight instructors and people like yourself are looking for. They're looking to hear that in their being, that they really want to do this. And actually to make them stand out amongst the hundreds and thousands that are interested, that's a key factor with it. It's just interesting to hear you say it and not to get long-winded about it. But just last night, I was having a conversation with a person that was like you, Oded, where she's been around for a bit. She has a full-time job, but she's always been interested in flying. And she kind of found out something triggered it, and I forget the specifics, but that's not important. The thing is that she found out that she really wanted to start pursuing this, and now she has done that, but she's still trying to navigate it and figure it out. But what you could hear in her voice was the spark, the passion for aviation. And I was like, okay, so, and I'm kind of like you, Theresa, like, okay, I'll help you out. I'll direct you to some things like where you can get a scholarship, blah, 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 because you really are interested in it. So if you're talking about it like that, then yeah, it's
Yeah.
going to be good.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, Theresa, I don't know if you want to expand on a little bit that you brought up something that I think is really, really, it's the perseverance because it is a great career, but it is not an easy career. It's
It's
also
not.
an expensive career to get started in, and things like that, which I'm sure you can talk more about than any of us.
It is expensive, and I think the thing that to me impresses upon me too, even more than the expense of it, is just that there are still groups of people, even though pilots are cool folks and usually we feel like we're part of a family, there are still people who don't feel like we belong there. So all the women on this panel, we're all women of color. And there are a lot of people who do not feel like we belong there. And so you have got to put on that armor and be ready to battle. I don't mean fisticuffs, but you have to be ready to get in there
Yeah.
and say, "No, I deserve to be here. And I'm going to show you just how good I am." Um, that to me was probably the biggest hurdle. And obviously that was a huge hurdle for me being the first. There was nobody that looked like me. And so if I can do anything for young people these days, especially if they look like me, it's I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to let them know, hey, no, you stick in this game. You deserve to be here. Keep working, keep working, keep working. Don't let anyone tell you that maybe you should find something else to do.
I have a question for you before I think somebody was going to say something earlier. Were one of you getting ready to chime in?
Me.
Go
That
ahead, Odette.
that a lot of times when people are like, oh, how do you do it? And I always give them my number. I'm like, I'm not gonna be calling you or texting you, but if you ask me for help, I'm gonna be there because I know you really want it. Because I've been lucky where I have out of nowhere I met all these people that are in the airlines and they've gone through everything from female pilots to Latinos, and they are always there to help me. And I always tell them that I'm like, here's my number, here's my Instagram. Call me, text me. If you really want help, I'm there to help. If I don't know the answer, I will call and text any CFI, every single person that I know. But you have to show that you want to, because this career, in the little experience that I have, if you don't love it, if you don't wake up and think about it, if you don't see an airplane, you're like a dog, right? Like with a square. If you don't feel that, this is not for you because it's hard. And the
Yeah.
flying in the beginning, for me, it was like, for many other reasons. In the beginning, I was like, you make it to the comfort zone, but you have to work towards it. So if you don't see that airplane from 20 miles away and you're like trying to see where it is, this is not
Yep.
for you. You have to work really hard for it. No.
Theresa, you've had one heck of a career at United Airlines. And what I mean, the aircraft that you've flown and the ascension that you've had within the airline and that type of thing. But so I have two questions for you. One, I wanted to go back to when you were first applying and you didn't meet the height requirement. Can you share that story with us? And then I want to ask you another question about your progress through the years.
Yeah. Well, actually, I don't like to say the name of the airline that I
I get rejected.
got them to change the rules, but you know, the 5'4" rule fell everywhere. I'm not going to say that I was the one that actually specifically did that, but I'd gone to an interview and actually I was going to fly a military airplane and we were under contract with an airline. And I go there and I take my resume into the lady who does the hiring and she looks at it and she goes, "Oh my gosh," she's all excited because I was the first Black woman pilot in the Air Force, so I'm the first one to get off active duty, and there's not a lot of me's running around, and so she's all excited, thinking, "I'm gonna get her," and she gets to the bottom of the resume and says 5'2", and she's like, "You're not 5'4", and I'm like, "No, I'm not 5'4". She goes, "Yeah, but you've been flying a KC-135, which is Boeing 707. I don't understand this," and I said, "I'm 5'2". She goes, "You can't be 5'4". And I go, "Nope, not anymore." Because I was tired of getting knocked off of my feet. Tired of it. And she goes, "Well, I'm going to reach out to the instructors over there and have them write a report on how well you do in the sim. And I'm going to have them give you a reach test." I go, "Okay, do that." Well, I hope you don't mind me saying a curse word, but I flew my ass off, Vince. And not only that, of course I could reach everything because the seat comes up and the rudder pedals come back, right? So Uh, I left there on a Sunday, and on a Monday, American Airlines had already changed the rule. Now, I don't know who else had the 5'4". I know Delta had it too. I'm not sure about if United had it or not, but the rule was gone.
Wow, just
Yeah,
like that.
just like that. Because it didn't
Yeah.
make any sense, right? It did not make any sense.
So tell us about your progression, because that was my other question. You have flown just about every kind of aircraft, Boeing aircraft there is, as
Yeah,
an airline
except for
pilot.
triple. I've
Huh?
never flown the 777. I've never flown the
Oh,
777.
okay. Well, I said
That was
almost
my
everyone.
that was my choice. Well, here's the thing. So I started out in the 727 as an engineer. Then I went to the 737. Then I went to the 757. Then I went to the 747, and I camped out on that for 23 years because I love that air. That's my favorite airplane of all time. Even after I flew the 787, it's like people say, "What's the best airplane?" I go, "I'm a 747-400 girl." I'm about
Wow.
the skies. Yeah, I mean, I still love that airplane. But then from there, I took my captain bid on a 757/767. And then finally I retired on the 7.8. So triple, I never flew. We used to make a joke about the triple. There's a really big one now. The 300 is huge. But we used to make a joke when we taxi by them and go, yeah, look at the light twin over there. We're talking about the 777-200, which was not as big as the 7.4. And so we'd call it the light twin. But I never had a desire to fly it. And there were a lot of pilots that had flown both, and they're like, oh, I love the triple because it was a little bit, it was a little better. The glass was a lot better. The airplanes have gotten so good. The 747, they said, oh man, that glass cockpit, it's ancient. I don't care. It was glass. I grew up in a 707 / KC-135, round dials. So any kind of glass was good for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Was there a point in your career where things started getting a little, I'll say, less challenging or easier, and you just kind of flowed like the rest of the pilots did, the rest of the male pilots, if you will?
You mean what? And it flowed as far as acceptance?
Yes, acceptance, career advancement, things like that.
Well, most people, honestly, most people don't just say it to your face. It's
Right.
the whispers. Okay. So I don't know if it ever got to a point where I felt like, oh, that was the turning point. Although I do remember a specific time when I was on the shuttle going out to the airplane, and I was on the 757 at the time, a first officer, and I got off the bus. Everybody's chatting where I was having a good time, and I get off the bus. And the next time I got back on, that same driver was there. Um, and he said, when you got off because I talk to everybody. So I mean, I know you know what I mean? That's just my
Right.
nature.
That's you.
I got on the bus. He goes, hey, how's it going today? I go, I'm fine. How you doing today? He said, I'm great. He goes, I just got to tell you something. I'm thinking, oh no. And he says, when you got off the bus the other day to go to your airplane, all the guys started talking about you. There's like, that's a shit hot pilot right there. She's really, really cool. And she's good. That did something for me.
Hmm.
When people think I don't care what people think about me, don't believe them. We all care about what people, and we all want people to think she's good, she's qualified, and she deserves to be here. Now, were there people that still probably looked at me like, what's she doing here? Yeah, there were.
There's always going to be a few.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
There's
But
always going to be a few.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, and then when I changed base, it was the same thing, the stairs, because they had never seen me. When I went from San Francisco to Newark, I mean, they would stop and I could feel them and they would just look. And then, it's like, no, she's not a FO, she's a captain. And it got better. People get to know you. You do a good job. They can't deny you.
Yeah. Ladies, this has been a Vince and Theresa conversation for a good part of this. Do any of you have some questions that you'd like to ask Theresa while we're having this mentoring conversation? Feel
Well, I
free
have
to
a
chime
question,
in.
but I actually would like to piggyback off of Captain Claiborne's story that she just told. Like, it's very interesting to see that no matter what part of your career you're at, you're always going to have skeptics. Like, even me, I'm just starting out my career as a certified flight instructor, and so this is my first professional pilot job, and it's been interesting to see how I've already experienced what Captain Claiborne has experienced at her airline job, where there's people who are questioning your credentials or like whispering, like, does this person actually belong here? But just like how she said, even though like you might try to put on like a face that, okay, I don't really care what anyone says, but when people actually do like praise you or give you recognition or credit for the great pilot that you are, that's actually very meaningful. And so I'll give one story. There was a student who I was flying with, and I was just a substitute instructor for them. But at the end of our flight, she was like, wow, Abby, this is the most I've ever learned on a flight. And like that student was near the end of their instrument training. And she's like, I learned so much from you today than I've learned throughout my entire instrument training with my instructor. And I was like, wow, that actually like means so much to me. Thank you. And even changing to a new flight instructor job at a new company during my training, the person I was training with was just like, wow, like I was not expecting you to be like this great. Like this is the best training flight that I've ever had with an incoming candidate. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, because I'm a professional pilot. This is what I'm trained to do. And so it's it's nice to be validated for the hard work that we put in, but we also have to recognize that we as women of color pilots always have to be perfect and always have to present a perfect front. Like we can't make mistakes. And so there's this saying that you have to work twice as hard to get like half of what people have. And that's really true for us.
Yeah, that being the case, so you graduated from the United Aviate Academy. Tell us about that experience and how that you played a role in the professional pilot that you are today.
Yeah, so that was a very unique experience. It was a Part 141 flight program, so accelerated full time. And I would not be able to, first of all, I would like to thank Captain Claiborne for the role that she's had in me attending the academy and all of the support and mentorship that she's provided while I was at the academy, because I would not be able to attend that school if I didn't receive a Sisters of the Sky scholarship to attend the school. And so I'm thankful that she saw the passion in me and believed that I could go through the program and be successful. And so it was a full-time flight training program, and you get all of your ratings from private pilot up until multi-engine or multi-engine instruction. And then once I completed that program, I worked as a flight instructor there for a couple of months before moving back home to Maryland. And so it's a very intense program. That's the hardest thing I've done in my life. And literally every month, me and a couple of group of girls would be on a Zoom call with Captain Claiborne, like, here's everything that's going great, but also here's all the things that are going like terrible and bad, and like just have like a big kumbaya. And like, but Captain Claiborne's always been very, very supportive of us and give us great advice throughout the struggles that we've faced through flight training.
But
Yeah,
sometimes it also meant, Vince, let me just tell you, being a mentor, it's the good and the bad. So, I can praise, but if you think about it, I'm old enough to be their grandmothers. So when I saw them like, no, I think you can do better than that, or you know what, this is what I think you need to do. Get busy, get at it. And you do have to have a thick skin. But to
Mhm.
me, it's like I'd rather come to these young ladies with the things that I think they need to improve on and let me be the one telling them so that someone else is not going, yeah, you're inadequate, you're not doing well. So,
no, that's a great point.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's great for it's better for them to hear it from you
yes.
initially. Yeah. So, Mariah, how about you? You have any questions for Captain
Um,
Claiborne?
No questions, but I will also say, like Abby was saying, that Captain Claiborne is just, she's always been there, even for, like she just said, the good and the bad. And for me, Captain Claiborne started as a mentor, but like you said earlier, I feel like we've built a friendship. I text her, I'm like, hey Bestie, how you doing today? Like we talk about flight, we talk about not flight, we talk about everything together. And she's always there for me with the good and the bad. And I just want to say thank you to you. And I just thought you guys should know that she's you, I know you already know, but she's amazing.
Mariah,
Yes.
what was the turning point for you with your intervention with Doctor Captain Claiborne that made you say, you know what, I'm really gonna go after this passion that I have.
So like she said before, like when I first started flying, it was just like, hey, this is fun. And I didn't know at all what I wanted to do with flying. I just knew that I liked it and I wanted to keep doing it. And she told me, she was like, I'm gonna be honest with you. She was like, I want you to just jump at it and see where it takes you. She said, I know you like doing this, but she was like, just do it and get back to me. Get back to me with what you where your thoughts are, where's your head at. And I told her at first, yeah, I just wanted this, I want to do this for fun. After a couple months of flying, I called her up and I was like, I'm going to the airlines. I just told her, I was like, I want to do this. I want to fly for, I want to do this. She said, you're doing this. She was like, you don't just want to do this, you will do this. And right then and there, I knew that she would be there from the beginning. She's been there since I started and she'll always be there.
Yeah, yeah. Oded, how about you? You had a question or comment?
I do have a comment and a question for everyone watching this and that is thinking about starting to be a pilot, starting their private license. These ladies are very lucky, and I've been very lucky because I have a mentor, but they have you, Captain. And, you know, that helps, but a lot of people don't. And my advice is if you have an instructor and you don't match, change. Don't
Yes.
Mhm.
hate. Do
Yes,
not
that's a
think
great advice.
this is hard, this is challenging emotionally more than, you know, mentally. You're spending your money. You are a, you know, it's your money. If you don't like somebody, change because sometimes you won't have a mentor like her or like the one that I have. And you're gonna stop doing it because some CFI will treat you bad. So don't stop, change
Or there's
it.
just not a chemistry.
Exactly. You know, we don't have to like everybody. People don't have to like us. We don't have to like them. So that's my biggest advice to anyone that is starting doing this because it will help. I should
Yeah.
have listened to a mentor and not and not did what I chose to do, but I needed to learn my lesson.
Right.
And then my question is, what is the worst experience that you have had dealing with somebody in the cabin and how you deal with it?
In the
In the
cabin,
cockpit.
The cocoa, sorry.
on the flight deck, you mean?
Yeah.
I don't think I've really had any really uh, bad situations, except for I remember a couple elections ago. This was funny. We were getting ready to go somewhere, and there were four of us. We're on the 747, and um, the captain. I had flown with the captain like a couple weeks before, and so after the briefing, he does all the briefing, and the three of us are first off. The rest of us are three first officers, and he says, "Okay, no talking politics on the flight deck." And we're all kind of looking at each other, and I'm like, okay. So he gets up to go do some paperwork, and the one guy says, "Who does he think he is telling us what we can talk about on the flight deck?" Said he's the captain. So we get up in the air, and sure enough, me and this fella are up there. We called them bunkies, but we're the relief pilots. And the captain and the flying first officer, they fly for a while, and then halfway through the flight, then we jump up in the seats while they're sleeping. And we got up there, and I don't know how it got on. It wasn't me. I didn't, but the guy started talking politics. Well, this captain had flown with both of us, and he knew she's passionate, and he knew, and he knew, and he's passionate. Well, it was ugly. It was
Hmm.
ugly. What I learned from that, though, that was how I felt. That was my edict for my crew. We don't talk politics. We're here to fly a safe airplane, get our passengers from A to B. Chances are we have different thoughts about different things. So let's just leave that alone. That was probably one of the worst situations that I remember on the flight deck
Wow.
because it was uncomfortable.
Wow. That's pretty interesting. You know, we have probably about 10 minutes left, and I wanted one of the things I wanted to cover with you guys and have and kind of hear from you, from all three of you ladies, is where you see your career going with what you're currently doing. What's your aspiration? What are you hoping to eventually do? I mean, I know all of you want to be airline pilots at some point, but earlier I was teasing Abby because Abby said, "Yeah, I'm gonna fly regionals." I'm like, "Oh, you're on a waiting list?" Or no, no, it's gonna happen though, Vince.
Put it to the universe.
Right, it
Exactly. I'm
is.
putting it out there, but tell us a little bit about your goals and what you want to accomplish over the next few years in terms of your flying careers.
I want to be like Captain Claiborne when I grow up. No, but really, I do aspire. Her career and her legacy has been phenomenal. She has inspired so many women and young girls like me growing up to aspire to become professional pilots, and she has done so with such like wisdom, and it's been great. And so, in terms of
You can
like
say it. She's a badass.
yes, exactly. And so, in terms of like outreach wise, I would love to mentor upcoming girls who like are interested in aviation, who are like
Hmm.
right behind me. I would love to mentor them and just help them out and so that they don't make the same mistakes that I've had, or I would be able to like just give them advice and connect them to opportunities and
That's great to
resources,
hear you say that.
become professional pilots. Yeah. And then ultimately, my career goal is to hopefully fly wide bodies with United and be based out of Dulles Airport.
Perfect.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's really great. How about you, Mariah?
Yeah, for me, pretty much the same as Abby said. My big thing is I want to give back. Mentorship, I would love to help young girls, um, just any way I can. And even now, like, even though I'm still in training, like now students at my school, other students, people who are working on private or instrument, I try to help out. I'm a tutor at our school, so I help out in any way. And then career wise, also what Abby said, I want to be a captain at United Airlines. And I was actually looking into, as of right now, I've been looking into the Denver base. So flying out of Denver.
Wow, you even picking your base already.
That's as of right now. As of right now,
You know
yes.
your base picks you, right?
I know, yeah.
Yeah, that's true.
Oded?
The same way, I've been very lucky in this path of having a lot of people that are in the airlines that have helped me and give me advice. So I do love giving advice and helping young women and Latino pilots because we're a very, very small percentage that this is possible and how you can do it. And for me, it's American. American Airlines has my heart.
It's okay,
Um,
Miami.
You know, when you go to Women Aviation and you meet the team that they have, and you feel like you're home, like they accept you for the little donkey that you are. It makes you feel good. And I know I'm not for everyone. Like most likely, a lot of us in this bed, no, I'm not for everyone, and that's amazing. So I had that feeling with them, so they have my heart already.
Yeah, that's good.
So, Captain Claiborne, tell us a little bit about Sisters of the Skies, your involvement with it, how it was formed, what its mission is, and then I'm going to do a follow-up with that.
Okay. Well, we came about in 2016, the end of 2016, and it was two young ladies having a chat, and they said, "Well, what what?" Actually, one saw the other on Facebook, right? So social media is not all bad. So she said, "Oh my gosh," she reaches out to her, "Oh my gosh, you're flying my favorite airplane." Because Nia was flying the 7-8 at the time as a first officer, and Angel was still in the Coast Guard. And they just started talking. And, like, well, who do you know? And who do you know? And so the next thing I know, I get a phone call from Nia saying, "Theresa, what are all the names of all the people at United?" And then we just started getting all the names. And the next thing you know, they're like, "Well, why don't we do a group and let's, let's just go on group me and let's just be able to talk to each other. Let's be able to inspire each other and just provide the mentorship to each other, camaraderie." And that's pretty much how it started. I was the old girl, so the OG. And so he said, "You be president. You be president." I go, "Well, why you want me to be? Oh, you be president." Well, I had the most name recognition. It made sense. And we just started building on that. And, we were first a social group. And then not too long after that, it's like, you know what? There's got to be more than this. So then we started giving out scholarships. And then we just kept bringing up new ideas, new ideas, new ideas. And so, well, let's do some mentorship or some outreach. And that's when we started Girls Rock Wings, which, it's like, well, let's take some little girls for the day and let's show them everything about aviation and let's take them up in an airplane. And so Girls Rock Wings was born. Um, it's amazing. We started out, this is the honest to goodness truth. The very first scholarship we gave out was for $2,500 that we raised when I did a birthday fundraiser on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the highest we've ever given out at our scholarship gala was 200,000, $10. That was a year that Boeing was spreading the wealth. And so they gave us a big chunk, 100,000. They gave 100,000 to a lot of different affinity groups, like Women in Aviation got it, and LPA got it, and Papa got it, and I think NGPA and us each got $100,000 to select some people. But we kind of average about 100,000. We got a gala
Yeah.
coming up in February, and we should be giving out the same amount of money. And it's just wonderful because it makes it possible for these young women who flying is expensive. We've talked about that already. It's expensive. So any leg up you can get is a good one. And so, yeah, it's a good thing.
So one of my favorite things to do as I kind of wrap things up is I like to do what I call an around the room. And I'm going to start with you ladies, and I'm going to ask each of you if you would, with your experience to date and what you're in the process of accomplishing, what you've gone through so far, what kind of advice would you give to a person similar in age or younger, maybe in high school or college, that you could just say, hey, this is something that you need to be aware of as you pursue a career in aviation? I'll let any of you start.
I can start. I'd say, I honestly just say, just keep doing it. You're doing the best that you can, and it's not going to be easy at all. You're not going to wake up every day and flying's not going to be your best friend. It's going to be hard sometimes, but if you really love it, if you're really passionate, just get up and do it.
Just straightforward, huh?
Yeah.
You can tell Captain Claiborne's rubbing off on you. So how about you, Oded?
Uh, I think it's very similar. Don't give up. It's worth it. You just have to work really hard. And, if you go to college, it's different because you're in a college, right? You have to go to classroom. But when you do a training, you have to push yourself. So surround yourself with other students that are pushing each other and being better. Even if they tell you you're a woman, what are you doing here? Let it go. It's going to take you maybe less hours than another person and sometimes more. That doesn't mean that you're bad or worse. It just means it's going to take you a little longer, and that's okay. Now, giving up, that's not an option. Don't give up.
Wow, couldn't said it better. Abby?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same theme as Mariah and Oded. I would say that this career path is not linear at all whatsoever. There will be great highs, but there will be some pretty low lows as well. And so just embrace the journey, celebrate yourself, be bold about your accomplishments when you are successful, but also when you're experiencing those lows, reach out to people because you are most likely not the first person going through what you're going through. And there's someone out there who has gone through what you're going through and has advice for you on how to get out of that low.
Wow, well said, ladies. Captain Claiborne, you've seen it all. You've been involved in a lot of things in terms as we've talked about through this show and just in general of mentoring and guiding and advising. What are some of the top of mind things that you think are the most important for these young ladies and others to really be cognizant of as they pursue their careers?
I would like to leave them with something that my mother said to me probably when I think I was in junior high, when I'd come home and upset because the teacher didn't give me an A. And she said, "Well, what are you upset about it for?" And she said, "What did you get?" I said, "I got an 89." And the teacher said she was grading on a curve, and there was only one other person that got higher than me, and they got an A. So why didn't she give me an A minus? My mother said, "Well, the last time I looked, 90 was an A, 90 and above was an A, right? Sounds like you got a B." I said, "Well, yeah, she gave me a B." My mother looked at me, a woman who never completed high school, and said, "Theresa, do A work and get an A." And that's what I say to these young ladies. That's what I say it to anybody who has an ear to be mentored. Do the very best that you can. The last thing you want is for someone to question whether you deserve to be there. So show them, I deserve to be here. See that A? So go for it. We're not always going to get an A, but here's the deal. You fly airplanes. If you shoot for the center of the runway, you're either going to be on the center or pretty close to it. If you accept being right of the center line or left of the center line, that's where you're going to be.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Absolutely. Ladies, it's been a pleasure to have all of you together on the show. Theresa, I absolutely, I don't even know what to say other than the fact that, the only way I can put it is that we really admire you. You're an amazing person with amazing accomplishments in terms of what you've done through your career. We all, Abby, want to grow up to be like Theresa, myself included. So, but I appreciate you being available and hearing what you had to say. And then, ladies, I appreciate you guys being forthcoming and really sharing, your real thoughts about what you're doing, and wish you all the very best. I hope to be getting on some airlines a few years from now, and whether it's a regional or a big boy, and seeing you guys there.
Yeah, they'll be
I
there.
fly through Denver every so often, so Mariah, I'll be looking for you. No, and I do fly through Miami too. I'm just messing with you guys.
Let's
But
go. Take
thanks,
you on one in a 172.
yeah. Thanks everybody for being on All Things Aviation and Aerospace. Appreciate the conversations and everything, and I wish everybody the best.
Thanks for having us.
You've been watching and listening to All Things Aviation and Aerospace, executive produced by me, Vince Mickens, and a production of the Private Air Media Group. I welcome you to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Until next time, stay safe, safe flying if you're a pilot like me, and all the best.